And thank you for joining us here on the Neutral Zone. I am Phil Milani, joined as always by my esteemed colleague, my partner in crime. Really, the best way to describe this person is my everything. It's at Eric Dalala.
Phil, less than 1 week to go until the NFL draft, and more than 1 week to go until the Broncos make a draft pick.
Yeah, we got to wait a long time.
We got to wait a little bit.
1 round, 2 rounds.
That's it.
3 rounds, and then we'll be there.
The Broncos pick at the beginning of the 3rd round.
67.
Yeah, that's at the beginning.
And then 68.
Yep.
Yeah.
69?
No.
Okay.
Just the back-to-back.
Got it.
As of the time we're recording this.
That's true. Could always trade up.
Everything is always...
Could always trade down.
Exactly. Yeah, we're going to get into a little bit of that, right?
Oh.
You think the Broncos start getting a little dicey out there?
A little frisky?
Yeah.
A little dicey.
Maybe that wasn't... Rolling the dice is kind of what I wanted to say, maybe, but
Yeah. Hold your feet to the fire a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, maybe they'll do some of that. Eric, we're not in our QZs today. It feels a little bit weird.
No, we're not, Phil. We were recording some draft specials.
Yeah. And then also we're recording this a little bit later in the day than we're used to. So
your alarm clock didn't go off.
Maybe there'll just be, maybe there'll be like a different vibe, like morning show versus afternoon show. Maybe just a different feel.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Maybe you'll lean more into like your inner DMAC.
Excuse me? Like the afternoon drive?
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of like my Schlereth.
Exactly. Maybe it'll be like that.
Yeah. It could be
Swanson,
interesting.
you can channel your inner Derek Wolf. Go after a mountain lion.
Yeah. Let's get out there.
Exactly.
Get my flannel on.
I don't know about the draft.
You have to come back to me.
I'll have to research all this and get back to you. We're just joking around. We love Derek Wolf.
Of course.
Yeah. It's our friend. He's a friend of the show.
He's a friend of the organization.
He is.
In addition to the show.
He did the Broncos postgame show a couple times.
He played here.
He played here?
Yep.
Yeah, long time.
Yeah. But no, I just, different. Phil, sometimes I like the morning show is nice to record because we just kind of get it over with.
Oh, really? Is that how you like it?
Well, my patience is just, it's higher at that point.
Oh, but now
you're sometimes, well, I didn't say it was high. I just said it was higher. But then in the afternoon, sometimes it's been a long day. I've just been typing. My computer, the steam from my computer has come up, hit me in the face all day. Yeah. And then I got to go do this. And I'm just like, I don't know how much Swanson I can take.
Yeah, exactly.
But
it's usually Swanson that sets you off.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Would you say you're more locked in the morning or locked in the afternoon? Are you like when you're like sharpest?
I pretty much feel like I'm always locked in.
Always sharp.
When I'm here, I feel like I'm locked in.
Yeah. I would say I'm probably sharpest in the morning.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah.
So any sort of, sayings or phrases.
If they're messed up today, extra.
Yeah, it's because it's the afternoon.
It's the afternoon, yeah.
The coffee starts wearing off a little bit.
I keep that going all day.
Yeah, but
it never wears off.
The body starts slowing down a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. Exactly.
You of course, have just emerged from your afternoon slumber.
Yeah, exactly.
You like to take a nice little break.
Siesta. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Hey, if it's good work if you can get it.
Yeah. Not everybody can get it.
No, they can't.
So we'll break down. We heard from George Payton and Sean Payton today.
That's why we're late.
It's the most informative press conference of the entire year.
You joke, but it actually was somewhat informative compared to a normal pre-draft press conference.
Yes.
Certainly longer.
I was joking, but yes, it was 49 minutes, huh?
That's right.
50 minutes?
I think 50 by the time it ended.
Sean Payton noted that it had gone on for a long time. He was like, I think I'll do one more and we'll say goodbye.
We'll say goodbye.
I like that.
He ended with a flourish.
He did. He took a shot at our friend Russell Wilson.
Maybe a little bit of a friendly jab.
It was a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shot's a little strong.
Shot's
strong.
We've
discussed this. We've discussed this at length before. But
I think jab. I think so.
I don't know what's.
Who's the Grizzlies guy? Dylan Brooks.
Yeah,
like he took a shot.
That was a blast.
That was a blast.
That was a blast.
Blast.
Yeah,
that
was a shot.
Yeah,
blast. I think is the
blast higher than shot, but a little chip, a little.
Yeah,
a chip is kind of appropriate given the nature of the.
Oh, I like it.
Given
chip.
the dig.
Yeah.
Of course, said let's let's hope we all keep our golf carts upright.
Yeah, exactly. That was a word on the street is that was not Russell Wilson driving that cart.
That's true.
Just a group that he was in.
Yes, it included Russell Wilson.
That included Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
A group that included Russell Wilson.
Weird that the blurry photo that was posted to Reddit from 300 yards away wasn't entirely accurate.
That's the world we live in nowadays.
That's the world we live in. People just want to get a few retweets.
You don't know what's going on out there. It's dangerous. It's murky waters.
What?
Dangerous.
Got it.
Yeah. Ooh. A lot of golf talk today.
A lot of golf.
Sean Payton, of course, saying that John Elway's taking a lot of his money on the course.
Funding his retirement because of their golf matches up in Idaho.
John Elway, world-class athlete. And even on the golf course, he's got a lot of talent.
It's true. They just did a redraft. Talk of Fame, Phil, of course, one of our go-to sites.
Friends.
They just did a redraft of the 1983 NFL draft and asked Hall of Fame voters who they would draft number 1 overall.
Still John.
Unanimous.
Yeah.
It would have been interesting if they had then ranked Marino and Kelly, but
they didn't do that. They just did the number 1.
They just did the number 1.
So the interesting part, they didn't want to do that.
Correct.
Got it.
But nice for John.
Yeah, that is good for John. Yeah. Of course, he could play baseball.
Good.
He could play golf. So he could really do it all. What he was doing the Senior Open down at the Broadmoor a couple years ago. Yeah. So you don't want to bet him any money on the golf course.
Oh, probably not.
I think unless I know that he likes to play with like Wayne Gretzky a little bit, Michael Jordan. Those are probably some interesting outings.
It's good company.
Yeah. Yeah, that is. What do you think it'd be like to be like the 4th? Like, hey, John tees off, blasts one down there.
Uh-huh.
Wayne does the same thing.
Yeah.
MJ, same exact thing.
Okay.
Yeah. And then and then they're like, you have to go.
Oh, then me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be too scared.
Yeah, I'd shank one right, slice it out over the.
Yeah.
Actually, I'd probably pop it up.
Yeah,
I'd pop it up 50 yards.
Too.
50 yards, pop it straight up.
Swanson would rip one.
Yeah,
down the center.
lace it right out there.
Yeah, 150 yards.
Low.
Whose clubs am I borrowing?
So we'll talk about a little bit what we heard from those guys.
Perfect.
Some of our top takeaways. Maybe.
Nice.
Then I thought maybe it would be fun to just kind of examine some rosters, Eric, and where the majority of players were drafted. What round?
Did you say this is like an exercise?
I would say it's an exercise. Yeah.
When's the last time you did that?
Something to think about. No, it's been a long time. Yeah, right. You know, I'm in the gym.
That one I lobbed it up.
4:30 to 7 a.m. every morning.
Oh yeah,
and then a little bit in the afternoon.
When do you eat lunch?
Lunch?
Yeah,
I don't do.
Okay,
just drink protein. That's it.
Should we mention that we're not alone here?
Oh, that Ben Swanson's with us?
Yeah.
I thought that had been established.
Sorry. We just kind of started talking about him.
I'm here.
How's it going over there?
It's great. I just posted one of Eric's articles for him.
Excuse me?
Get a little peek behind the curtain.
Wow.
That's why you always have your laptop.
When you're just writing like me, just multiple stories at once. Yeah. It's hard to.
You're supposed to be fact checking what we're saying here.
Yeah. Well, the beginning, you don't say anything.
Oh.
Fact check. Did Elway golf at Broadmoor?
Yeah, that's true.
I remember that.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not so that sounds rigorous. Like a good show.
Yeah. Anyway, so this exercise, we'll go through and be like, hey, would you think that the majority of teams are made up of first round picks?
No.
Second round picks? You know, we'll just break that down.
Okay.
Let's just say we did the Broncos. Well, we thought maybe it would be the starting 22 offense and defense for next year.
What about
as it stands right now?
Special teams? You didn't do that.
We didn't do a special teams. Yeah. That's kind of an outlier when it comes to the draft.
Yeah.
Riley Dixon, 7th round pick.
Drafted.
So we did this Broncos roster. We did the Super Bowl 50 starters. And then just for pure misery, we did the Chiefs Super Bowl team. Just to say.
Which one?
This one, the most recent one.
Sad that you have to clarify now.
Yeah, I know. But they have 3 though, right?
But one of them
Broncos have 3.
Wasn't one of them like Super Bowl 6 or something?
Yeah.
That's kind of a nonsense,
true.
Right?
That is true. Do you still count that? I don't know.
I wouldn't.
I'm not sure.
Were
they playing plumbers?
Jake Plummer played in the 2000s.
2000. Yeah.
I think I would say Super Bowls after like 31. Those count.
Yeah, exactly. That's really the cutoff.
The Broncos leading 3-2 over Chiefs.
Yeah.
That's nice.
That's how I sort of look at it.
Yeah.
And the Raiders, they don't even have any.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chargers have none, no matter when you start counting.
Yeah.
Kind of bad for them.
That's not good for them.
No, it's not.
So, yeah, where do you think the majority of starting lineups, what round are these players found in?
I cannot wait to find out.
That's going to be nice.
Yeah.
Maybe some fans want to weigh in on some of these topics today.
Oh.
How they do that?
Well, Phil, there are many ways you can get involved because this is an interactive podcast. You could leave us an email at neutralzoneshow@gmail.com.
One of the best ways?
neutralzoneshow@gmail.com.
neutralzoneshow@gmail.com.
Or, Phil, you could leave a voicemail at 707-NEUTRAL. We got a voicemail this week. It was from our dear friend, Zach, with a C.
Non-traditional spelling.
Non-traditional spelling. And it was a little bit...
it was out there.
It was a little nonsensical. So I don't know.
We like that.
Are we playing it or
typically,
no?
but I don't think we're going to.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a serious show today.
Serious show. We're very serious. We're locked in. The premise of the voicemail was whether the Broncos should sign Johnny Manziel. So that's just...
Yeah.
We appreciate hearing from you, Zach.
So yeah, 707 neutral.
You could tweet at us at Eric Dalala, at Phil Milani, Eric with an A, Phil Milani with a PH. Both non-traditional spellings. You'll see Phil on Twitter now. I am no longer verified, but you, of course, pay for Twitter. And so you still have a check mark.
No, I don't.
You're right up there with some of the greats. Our friends James Palmer, Brandon Cristal, Darren McKee.
They pay for it.
You.
I don't
all pay for it. So
anybody is free to look.
I
don't do that.
Yeah, looking's for free.
I think that if you, I think if you just saw like my nonsensical tweets that like don't really make a lot of sense or like random, then you're like, that is Phil. We know
that's Phil. Yeah. Interesting. Twitter pays me, so that's kind of nice.
Oh, how much?
I can't talk about it. It's kind of an NDA
contract?
Sort of situation.
You and Elon sat down and just hammered out the details.
Yeah, I had my people tied to his people. Or Phil. There's one more way.
Tell me about it.
You could go to the Broncos official YouTube page. Don't go to the other one.
The official.
Go to the official one.
Then you type in longest standing Broncos podcast.
Yep. That's what it's tagged with. Good SEO. And then you find our podcast, skip past any other videos, go straight to this podcast and leave a comment.
And you leave the comments.
And now, Phil, let's hear some of those comments.
And now back to you. Last week, we talked about Albert Okwuegbunam a little bit. Okwuegbunam.
No. Okwuegbunam.
Okwuegbunam.
You sound like you're doing Duolingo.
Well, funny you mention that because Jeremy comments and says, space, Woog, space, Bunam. Okwuegbunam. And then underneath.
It's not right.
And underneath, YouTube says translate to English. So there's your Duolingo.
I wasn't saying that because of his name. I was saying just of how, like,
because I'm dumb.
The way you were saying it, you were like,
Okwuegbunam.
If I was like,
Okwuegbunam.
Bonasera.
I think my pacing was just a little bit off.
Pacing is a little weird.
Okwuegbunam. Okwuegbunam. I got it.
Closer.
I've set up this with him personally.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, one-on-one. I just said, hey, how do I say it?
He's probably just wanted the crazy guy to walk away.
He's helped me.
Just walk up and you're like, I don't know about him. It's like, please just don't hurt me.
Just grunt. J. Prez Bronk.
Okay.
Hey, boys, love the show. Do you guys have any game day rituals?
Oh.
Any game day rituals?
Well, we're kind of different here. So mine is going to the game.
Right. So that's
different. That's different than yours.
Yeah. My game day ritual is that I blow dry my hair 1 extra minute because it's game day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got to get the extra volume.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe a little more gel for a little more product.
That's nice.
That's my ritual. No, I don't think I have. I, of course, just come straight to the studio and get my face on TV as much as possible. That's my ritual. Swanson, what do you do?
It's amazing.
Well, I get there like 7 hours early or so.
You just stayed in the parking lot for a little while, right?
Just stayed in the parking lot for a long time.
Count how many bumblebees there are.
Before that, I take some photos.
Are you tailgating or what are you doing?
Oh, God, I wish. I got to get photos of the jerseys that stay the same half the time. Like, oh, here's Russ's jersey in the locker. And then the next week it's the same kind of photo. But
I don't think you have to worry about that anymore.
yeah.
So you go in the locker room before the game?
Before the game.
You sound disgruntled.
No.
I'm gruntled. I'm perfectly gruntled.
Darren Tadlock says, sorry, Patrick Surtain, but my favorite Broncos DBs are Eric and Phil. I know. Or ours.
Yeah, maybe because
Denver Broncos is, I don't know.
Deadbeats?
Could be. Could be. Melvin Sanchez. Okay, this was a comment from the week before where it said that
got to think back 2 weeks here.
Yeah, Phil can't get into the movie. Doesn't go to the movies because they don't let you bring in snacks from the outside. And I was like,
you thought he was calling you large.
I thought he meant like I like to consume a lot of snacks. Yeah,
just true.
But he goes, no. I would never diss Phil. I meant Phil is the snack.
Oh, God.
That's why he'd have a hard time getting into the movie theater. Thank you, Velvet. Hey, what do you think about that? So I said you laugh for some reason. I don't.
Yeah, it's disconcerting.
And I think that might have been. Oh, Joel Anthony says you guys are definitely in off-season form, still entertaining, but so many bloopers.
What bloopers?
So many
basketball
bloopers.
Player Joel Anthony.
Joel Anthony.
Yeah.
I think. Are you thinking about Joel Embiid? No, Joel Anthony.
Well, you looked that up fast.
Hey, thank you, Swan.
Wait for the Heat.
All right.
So with that, let's get into our first topic and the most important topic on this week's show, and that is breaking down Sean Payton and George Payton's press conference, the pre-draft press conference. It's sort of like an annual tradition.
It is.
You know, sometimes they do it on the Monday of the draft week. Sometimes they do it the Thursday, like exactly 1 week before.
Any other days? I've seen Friday.
Have you seen Friday?
I have.
Really?
You ever seen Tuesday?
Yeah.
Yep.
So sometimes
Tuesday. The Ravens did it like a month ago.
I don't think they do it Wednesday though before.
No, too soon.
And the Wednesday the week before is way too long.
The Ravens did theirs like a month ago.
Really?
Yeah, early April.
Well, of course, the Broncos did theirs on Thursday 1 week before. I kind of like that. I think that's the best.
I like it. Right at noon when the sun's high in the sky.
Yeah, high noon. It was a showdown.
It was a showdown.
Between who and who.
I can imagine that was much louder than the in the whistle.
If you're listening in your headphones, I apologize. You're just like walking down the street holding your bag of groceries and you hear a scream and you just if you just dropped everything you were holding, everything you were holding or you just crashed into something, please send your invoice to Phil Milani.
You brought your own bags to the grocery store.
Yeah,
so
BYOB.
Yeah, you didn't. Why would you throw it up in the air? I don't think you do that.
Because you're alarmed. The type of bag doesn't determine how scared you are when you made that noise.
Oh, I hold mine down low, like there's like loops.
Yeah, but what if you're like,
oh, I guess you could do that if you're crazy. Anyway, that was from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
I know which one you are.
It took a second to get you there, but you got there. That was nice.
I look good. You're the good.
Yeah, thank you. I know that's why it took a while. What would you say the rest of us are? If I'm the good,
I'll be the bad.
Okay, yeah.
I'd rather be bad than ugly, I think.
Yeah. Swanson,
sorry. I guess I don't have a choice.
Wow.
Sorry.
You never really had a choice. You know, it sort of happened. Anyway, so what were some of your takeaways from...
That was a good one.
Yeah, see, this is an afternoon one. This is a little bit crazy.
People are going to love this.
Yeah. Some of your big takeaways here from... Coach Payton and George Payton.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I'm most interested to see play out is how do you marry the two philosophies here where, you know, so I just did a little piece. I don't know if you clicked on it or not. DenverBroncos.com about the draft day trade histories of Sean Payton and George Payton. in the last 13 drafts, the Saints with Sean Payton made 22 draft day trades, all of them up the board.
All moving up.
All of them. They did not trade down a single time over his final 13 years. I think the final tally there was like 23-3. And so a significant difference in terms of the Saints moving up the board. Whereas you look at George Payton.
His 2 drafts here.
He's had only 2 drafts and didn't have a first round pick for one of those. So a little bit harder to compare apples to apples, but he's moved up twice and moved back 4 times. And in the 3rd round in particular, that's where all 4 of the trade backs have come. So, last year, of course, they had a pick. They moved back, still were able to get Greg Dulcich. You think of a couple of years ago, Broncos, I think, had the 70-something pick, moved all the way back to 98 and 105, picked up a couple of extra thirds. So my question is, like, how do you marry that aggressive approach with one that seemingly values, like, just getting more darts, as George Payton has talked about? And I kind of expected them to kind of deflect a little bit, but they actually gave us a pretty clear answer, which is that they've looked at guys that they made a list the other day of, here are the guys that we think are worth going up to get. And then if a guy starts falling, we're going to try to do that. It was interesting hearing Sean Payton. He said, it's really not that hard to trade. He was like, you can find draft picks. It's not hard to get draft picks.
Yeah.
So in his time in New Orleans, the Saints would often reach into next year's stockpile. Broncos do have a full assortment next year, which is nice. But it was, so they're able to do that. And then they both talked about, hey, we are comfortable as well trading back if a guy's not there. But it just seems like they're on the same page there. They give a little bit of insight. And that kind of goes along with who's going to be in charge. If something comes down to the wire and there's a fundamental disagreement on draft day, who makes that decision? That's where they did kind of deflect, where they said those decisions are made ahead of time. We're going to talk those out. I think people think when you're on the clock, you think of that movie Draft Day, where people are like panicking and you're calling and you're trying to figure out all this stuff. No, you know exactly what you're going to do. If these 3 players are picked, we're going here. If this guy's still available, we're taking them. And so it was just interesting hearing them talk about kind of meshing their 2 philosophies. That Sean's had his way for almost 2 decades. George has had his way for a couple of years here, and figuring out how to make those work together is important.
Yeah, this is not like your fantasy football draft.
No.
Where, hey, maybe the guy you wanted was taken right before, and then you're like, oh, what am I doing now?
Yeah.
They've gone through these situations a lot, and they said rarely, like in the moment, there's any kind of serious conflict, huh? I mean, that's sort of interesting to think about, that they've like worked through a lot of these different situations. I think one thing that stood out to me is just like how much these guys have been grinding on tape. I mean, George Payton said the other day that like they looked at 1,200 snaps of 3 different players. That's a lot of footage. I know that those guys like to do that. It's interesting because I think that as fans at home, you watch a couple of highlights and you're like, I kind of like this guy.
Yep.
I know that I do that.
Sure.
And
you see the best of that player.
Yeah, you just see the best of it. But then they kind of said, hey, the more you dive into some of these guys, the more you learn where you're like, oh, I wish I hadn't seen that. Like that wasn't good. You don't want to keep, and then the more you dig, and they said they had one guy who initially was toward the top of their board, and then they had to like flip him to the bottom, toward the bottom, just some more that they dived in. So that's why you do your homework, and I think that for the Broncos heading into this draft, just with 5 guys, 5 selections, they really need to hit on these guys. And so this is going to be an important draft for the Broncos. And it sounds like Sean Payton and George Payton working together, it's been working well. George Payton said that Sean Payton kind of reminded him of Nick Saban.
That's a good reminder, I think, right?
That's good.
Pretty successful.
Yeah, I think that was good. So
yeah, they clearly have kind of, I think because they're such football addicts or, like football so much, whatever you want to say. He said Sean was like a scout. They're both in there grinding tape. They're working really hard. This is not, I think with the information they have available too, like Sean mentioned, the analytics that they have is better than anything he's seen. And so they're putting in a ton of work. And this is all about, everything the Broncos have done this offseason, right? It's been a little bit low key. And I think Sean kind of emphasized that again during this process. He was like, you're not going to see cameras in there. This is going to be the people that were in. You're not going to have a bunch of people who like are just popping in for a second. It's going to be people that we've worked with for months on this. Those are the people that are going to be in there during the draft. And we're going to try to find players that make our football team better. And Phil, he's got a history, right, of finding guys later in drafts. Alvin Kamara, Jari Evans, Zach Strief, Marcus Colston. I mean, these guys are good players that were found later. And so, we'll talk about in a little bit kind of these where people are found. But I do think Sean's idea of you can't just not get something out of this class because it's your first pick is in the third round and you only have 5 picks. You still got to find a way to get valuable contributors, and they're focused on doing that.
Alvin Kamara was pick number 67.
Spooky.
That is spooky. Makes you think a little bit.
Yeah.
They also talked a little bit about their approach to this draft because they're not picking until the third round. It kind of creates an interesting approach for Thursday night. George says they still do all their homework and stuff. But then they just said that they have to sort of be ready for a lot of different situations, just depending on how things fall. An interesting position. Sean Payton said that the majority of like mock drafts, which is sort of how fans follow along with the draft to know if, hey, did my team get a good guy? You're just basing it off of what evaluators say. Well, the Broncos have their own evaluators that are doing this stuff. So he said that like 95% of draft coverage is of the first round, which that's probably pretty accurate, of course. Right? Yeah. So this one's going to be sort of tricky, just trying to know how much value the Broncos added. They did say that based off of what they did in free agency, they feel like, okay, we're just going to take the best player available. And George Payton kind of said something that was like, hey, you saw some of our approach during free agency about what kind of guys we're looking for with Sean, big and physical.
Yeah. And, you talk about kind of their mentality on night one of the draft. I thought that, again, shows like a big difference between this year and last year. Last year, the Broncos, it was kind of celebratory. They're like, we're going to put on Russell Wilson highlights. It was almost like it was a coronation of sorts. Like, we're glad we don't have picks because we just got Russ.
That's kind of like the Rams with those shirts.
Yeah.
What did they say on them?
Swanson?
This is a family program.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. I don't think we can say
but the tone this year is different in terms of George is like, we're going to be ready to go. We're going to be charting each pick. We're going to be making sure. Not that they didn't do that last year, but there was kind of like this coy, like, oh, we're going to watch Russ highlights,
Yeah.
And so it's just a little bit different this year in terms of the perspective there. I do think what'll be interesting with 67 and 68 is that because you have back-to-back picks, you're going to know you can have 2 guys if you want them right there. And so if the Broncos have 2 guys that they think are higher up on their board, it's possible they just select them right there. If they've got 1 guy, obviously you take that player and then you trade back with the other pick. If you're able to maybe take a 4th and take the 67 and go up and get a guy if he's falling. So the back-to-back, it's kind of like in fantasy football, when you get to that snake draft, if you're the last person picking, it is kind of, you got to wait a while, but it's nice to know, hey, I can get 2 guys here if I want. You don't have to worry about somebody jumping you to get one of these other players. So it'll be interesting to see how that particularly impacts the strategy of what they do on day 2 of the draft.
Yeah, most definitely. Now, you mentioned Sean liking to trade up.
Yep.
Do you think that's just because of where New Orleans was? They had Drew Brees at quarterback, like teams that are a little bit closer. They tend to be a little bit more aggressive because they're like, hey, we don't need like some guys that are going to be like a backup safety that can play special teams. We don't really need that. We need like that one little piece that's going to really set us over the top. You think that's because of where they were, or you think that's more just of how he likes to approach things?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at when he did trade down, it was his first 2 years on the job. And they were able to, I think in 2 of those trades, they got a player from the other team. And then they also got a draft pick. And I believe those draft picks were really successful. I can't think off the top of my head, Swanson, maybe if you pull it up. I think the 2006, 2007, they
line, right? I think that
they might not have even included it. So it might be impossible to look up. But if you look at Pro Football References, Saints draft history, 06, 07. So part of that, I think, is, when you have a quarterback and you've got a team that can be in contention, certainly you're going to be more aggressive. but it's not like they did it 1 year, right? They did this over the course of 13 years.
Yeah.
And so I think at that point, it's more of a philosophical approach of, hey, we're going to put ourselves in this position every year and we're going to go after it every year. And we're not going to be okay with just kind of, existing in this middle tier, because even in the years that the Saints were 7-9, kind of, I think 3 years in a row, they were 7-9, they were still doing this. And so they're still making runs at it. They got some really good players. Obviously not everyone is going to work out, but I like the approach of, hey, if we see a guy that we like that fits what we want to do, we're going to go get him. I like that approach. And obviously you don't want to draft at 67 every year, but I do think around the league, you see certain teams they value proven players. They value the ability to get one star guy over a bunch of draft picks, and just sometimes draft capital is a little overvalued. And so if hey, I can move up and get this player, and you think that guy's going to be a core piece,
do it.
It's probably worth doing it, even if you have to give up a third next year or whatever.
Yeah.
And let's be clear, Phil, if the Broncos want to go up from, you could probably get into the 50s with like your third and a fourth, maybe.
Yeah.
But if you want to go
more than
you want to go up into the 40s or the 30s,
yeah,
you're going to have to do something with next year's picks too. And so I think that's less, or a current player.
Yeah.
And so I think that's less likely. But the thing about Sean is he's done that. He's traded players away.
Yep.
He's traded first round picks in coming years. He's traded picks in the third round. So he's not afraid to go get a guy if they think he's worth it. And it's possible a guy that they think has a first round grade or a high second falls into the 50s, and they say, let's go get this guy.
Yeah, exactly. You have to really be all in on your evaluation, right? Like you got to be like, I feel really solid about this guy to do that. So, normally you hear like, hey, the top 100, that's sort of the sweet spots, and the Broncos have 67, 68, and then 108. You would think that maybe those three guys could contribute as rookies in some form or fashion, getting a jersey on game day, contributing on special teams, just bringing something to the table as rookies. Then maybe those, maybe 139 and 195, more of guys with some upside, maybe some guys that let's take a flyer on this guy, see what happens in training camp, somebody like that, where maybe more boom or bust kind of idea on some of the, or a little bit of a project in some of those last two there. But yeah, it's going to be interesting just to see how these personalities all come together, because one thing that George Payton also talked about today was you got to draft guys that fit your coach's scheme. And of course, this is the third draft in a row that George is going to be with a new head coach. So not an ideal situation to be in, but if you can just start to just have some consistency here and start building the team, start getting, I know we throw this around a lot, but have sort of an identity.
Yep.
Then I think then you'll start to see maybe some of these draft classes start to stack up and then you can have some more success that way.
Definitely. I looked it up real quick. Jari Evans and Roman Harper were the two guys that they traded back for in that first year. So Pro Bowlers, good players that, if you can trade back and still get those guys, obviously really valuable. I think your point there, Phil, about stacking classes and coaches and identity, that's all really important because the Broncos, for example, the two of us think the Broncos have somewhat of a need at edge rusher, right?
Yep.
We don't know, we're hoping Nick Bonito takes a big step forward. We hope that Baron Browning continues to take a step forward. We have no idea what Sean Payton or Vance Joseph evaluation would have been of Nick Bonito or Baron Browning. And so it's like, if you had him here all 3 years, there's a possibility they could still be here and they're guys that fit what you want to do, but you just don't know that. And so when you're looking at a room, or you could even say that you could say the same thing about really any position group on the roster of, hey, is this wide receiver group, is it built the way that Sean Payton wants it to be built? And we've heard him say really good things about those guys, but you just don't know for sure when they haven't been the ones building it. And so I think when you have your best football teams is when rosters turn over so quickly. It probably only takes 2 or 3 years, but when you've got a team built in the mindset and the identity and the mold of your head coach, and unfortunately the Broncos right now kind of have like 3 head coaches worth of players on one team, and you're just trying to figure out, okay, well, it's possible that some of these guys that fit the Vic Fangio mold still fit what Vance Joseph and Sean Payton want to do on defense. And it's possible some guys that, Nathaniel Hackett brought in, like maybe Sean Payton loves Montreal, Washington. We just don't know any of that. And so it makes the challenge of drafting a little bit more difficult. And it means that you've got to hit on these 5 picks because these 5 picks are Sean Payton guys, quote unquote. Yeah. And so the more Sean Payton guys you can get on the team, the better. But it also means that you can't whiff on a 3rd rounder here. You can't whiff on, you really got to get a special teams contributor or 2 on day 2 of the draft too. So or day 3 of the draft. So it makes things, everything's just a little bit more important.
Yeah. Like some positions, like Pat Surtain is going to be good in no matter what. But then maybe same draft, Micah Parsons, that's a guy that you're like, okay, Dan Quinn obviously knows how to get the most out of Micah Parsons in Dallas, but maybe a different defensive coordinator was like, I don't really like to do that with that position. So I don't really value that, even though he's a really good player. So you're right. I think that like guys like Montreal Washington or Nick Benito, you're like, hey, what do these guys think about them? We'll find out a little bit just based off how they approach the draft. Like if they go out and get an edge rusher, then you're like, okay, they've identified this area as a priority. Or at least the guys who are available when they were picking, that was the best players that they were there and they didn't care that it was an edge rusher. So
every team says they're going to draft best player available. I do think there's a degree of best player available at a position that we could need.
Yeah, like 3 or 4 positions that are like hey, we need.
The Chiefs are not going to draft a quarterback in the 1st round.
Yes.
That's just not going to happen.
Well, what about the Packers? They got Jordan Love.
They thought Rodgers was kind of at the end there.
That's true.
But they're just teams that you're not going to do certain things. And so if there are positions that if the Broncos drafted it, it's harder with a 3rd round pick, right? Because you could probably justify adding depth to just about any position. And they talked about, hey, we project what guys are going to do in year 1, year 2, year 3. And so if you're sitting there looking at a player and you say, okay, well, this inside linebacker, right? Like Josie Jewell's gonna be a free agent after this year.
Yeah.
We don't really need an inside linebacker right now, but next year we might need one. And so is that worth a pick? You could do that at a lot of different spots on the roster.
Yeah.
And so at 67, you probably are closer to best player available, but I do still think, Sean even said it, we have a list of things we're trying to accomplish during the draft. Yeah. And you're going to want to try to check some of those off, but it doesn't always happen. Last year, we thought the Broncos were going to draft a left tackle, or I guess just a tackle in general, and inside linebacker, right? Yeah. And George Payton got to the end of the draft and he said, we tried he said we tried a couple of times to get a tackle and it just didn't fall that way. And we're not going to reach for this guy. So it is difficult to mesh those needs and mesh. Every other team's trying to make their roster better too, and so it's not always going to work out exactly the way you want it to.
And we're still learning the personality of Sean Payton here a little bit, but it does. I do get the sense that maybe like him and George together, that's a good combination there. Like George tends to be maybe a little more reserved, patient. Like, hey, we're not gonna reach, like you said there, or like, hey, let's like be really smart and calculated with this. And then I could also see Sean being kind of like that personality that's like, this guy's gonna be solid for us. Let's go and do this. Yeah. I could see those two like just playing off each other well.
Yeah, I think you want both of those to offer, hey, and that's what a GM's job is, right? To make sure that your team is going to be in good position for the future, the long haul. And a head coach's job is to win now. And so I do think a head coach in general probably is closer to that. Hey, let's go get this guy. I need this guy. I want X player. It might be a luxury to, like some people would say, it's a luxury to draft a running back at 67. Sean Payton might say, hey, that guy's really fast. I want that guy. Yeah. And so it is a balance of what's best for the team overall. They'll sort all those things out, but it does seem like the process has been going well.
It's talking about guys that are like, hey, is this a fit for like a Sean Payton kind of guy? It does feel like a dynamic running back is sort of the Sean Payton mold for an offense. You think about him drafting Reggie Bush in the first round, Mark Ingram, and then of course Alvin Kamara with pick number 67. Yep. So you think maybe, okay, hey, he values this, so all we have to really go off of is how he's approached things in the past with New Orleans. And then sort of that'll give us an idea of what maybe the way he likes to do things.
Yeah.
So
and we'll see this weekend. We'll find out soon enough.
Yeah. So any other takeaways from the press conference, Eric?
No, I mean, kind of a minor thing in that the Broncos are eligible to meet right now about football and start installing stuff. And when Sean Payton said they're going to lift and run, he meant it. That. Because they're not doing anything else. They're not meeting about football right now. I think part of it, Sean Payton made it sound like he doesn't want it to be too mentally taxing on the guys, which is interesting. He's pushing them physically. He's like, I don't want guys to feel like they're going to football practice in April.
Yeah, I like that.
It's a long season. These guys just finished in mid-January. If you're doing football practice now, May, June, July, it's a long time to just go and do the same thing and be looking at film. And so I kind of like that approach. Keep them fresh for another month. When you get to OTAs or phase 2, put the stuff in there and get going. But for now, run, lift.
Yeah. That sort of gets back to some of the ideas of having a veteran head coach. He's like, hey, no, we don't do that.
Yeah.
This doesn't work like this.
Right.
And you just are like, yeah, I trust in that vision just because he's done it for so long. He knows, hey, if I push these guys hard now, that's sort of like a turn off.
Well, and there's no panic, right? Like this time last year, not to say there was panic might be too strong, but
we got to learn this playbook.
Coach Nathaniel Hackett was like, there's a ton of stuff to learn, and there's so much with this offense, and they're doing a great job digesting it all. But Russell Wilson's leading voluntary.
NASA was here.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But Russell Wilson was leading voluntary walkthroughs at like 6 a.m. Yeah. Rookies were coming in at 5 a.m. to meet with him. I mean, Tim Patrick was like, hey, we got to make sure that we're here and learning. We got to meet extra. Otherwise we'll never know this in time.
Anything like this before.
There was just a degree of, like, at the time it was good that they were putting in the extra work, but in retrospect, it's like it was made a little too complicated. And I think Sean Payton is kind of the sense that, like, we're going to be fine. I know what we're doing.
A lot of confidence.
Like there's been no questions yet, and we'll get to it, but like, how are they learning the offense? Are they gonna be able to do it in year one? But like, I think he just knows what he's doing. And if he says we don't need to start learning the offense until May, okay.
Yeah. Whereas a first-time head coach,
there's so much to do.
Radio, it's like, hey, what are they doing? Shouldn't they be doing this? Why are they doing that? Or, just so much about that. I think he also mentioned that Sean did that was like, this is my first introduction to these guys. I'm getting to know these guys. And, there's just sort of a, let's learn about each other period here before we just like dive into just straight into meeting space and all this other stuff. Let's learn each other. Let's get to know each other. Let's lift. Let's bond. Let's grind. And then we'll get into the meeting space.
Exactly.
And then NASA comes in. Yeah. All right, Eric, let's move on to topic number 2 here. And we're just maybe taking a closer, deeper dive into how rosters come together. Are football rosters, the starters, are they mostly made up of first-round picks or second-round picks like you would tend to think? Like, hey, all the talent's in the first round. So if we're looking at the starters, it's going to be majority first round. Not quite the case in a lot of situations, Eric.
Oh, what do you know? Tell me what you know.
Okay, so for this Broncos team, we did a little projecting here, but we came up with what we think are the 11, excuse me, the 11 starters.
On each side of the ball.
Okay. 4 first rounders. Okay, that's Jerry Jeudy, Garrett Bowles, Mike McGlinchey, and Pat Surtain.
You nailed that.
Pat Surtain. And then second round picks, there's 3. Cortland Sutton, okay, Javonte Williams, Randy Gregory.
That's 3.
But yeah, 3. That's Randy Gregory. But then there's 7 third rounders. Okay. And there's 4 fourth rounders.
Okay. So 14 players in the top 100.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Give or take, because Browning, right, was 105.
Yeah, if you just want to say the first 3 rounds, 14. Yeah.
So 14 out of 22, that's 68%.
But it does seem like the third and fourth round, there's like a nice sweet spot.
64%.
Oh, that was pretty good for just making up a number.
68?
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Okay. So how many
that's this
fourth
Broncos
rounders?
team.
Four
Fourth rounders. Okay. And then just 1 5th and 1 6th.
Yeah.
The 6th rounder,
DJ Jones.
And then 2 CFAs. Tim Patrick, we're counting as a starter, and then Alex Singleton.
Okay.
So, yes, it's top heavy, but it's also, there's a lot of players in the 3rd round.
Yeah, of course.
That are starters for the Broncos. So,
yeah.
But the Broncos have had a lot of 3rd round picks.
Yes.
Recently.
And they have not necessarily hit on 1st round picks.
Last 3 drafts, they've had 6 3rd round picks.
Yep.
So we're like, oh, maybe this is sort of just weird. It's just this Broncos team.
Okay.
So we thought that. Okay. So we went to the Super Bowl 50 starters. Okay. That team was very top heavy. 7 1st round picks.
Okay.
You want to go through them?
Sure. Oh, like try to name them?
Yeah. 7 1st round picks.
Oh my gosh. Peyton Manning.
Yeah. Peyton Manning.
Von Miller.
Yeah.
Marcus Ware.
Yeah.
Aqib Talib.
Yeah.
Bradley Roby.
Bradley Roby was not a starter, but yes, he was a 1st round pick.
I don't know where I got that.
You got that. Sylvester Williams.
Oh, of course.
Vernon Davis was technically a starter.
Okay.
Demarius Thomas.
Oh, yeah, DT, of course.
So
that's 7.
Very top heavy, but there were 5 3rd round picks that started on that Super Bowl 50 team.
Okay.
So solid contribution from the 3rd round there. 2 5th rounders and 2 6th rounders and 3 CFAs.
At Paradis.
So that's 7 guys 5th round or later.
Yep.
So you're finding a lot of talent here where the Broncos are drafting this year.
I have a theory, but I'll let you
and then,
do one more.
Just for the sake of the exercise.
Sure.
We looked at the Chiefs roster that just won the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Well, they just won the Super Bowl. How are they constructed?
They have 1 1st rounder at quarterback. That's kind of all that matters,
and that's what really matters. They only have 3 1st round guys on their team as starters.
Okay.
Okay. Patrick Mahomes, obviously.
Yep.
George Karlaftis, who's a rookie.
Yep.
And then Trent McDuffie.
Corner.
Yeah.
Washington.
So the rest of them, 7 2nd rounders, 5 3rd rounders, 1 4th, 2 5th, 1 6th, 2 7th, and 1 CFA. So spread out a little bit, but primarily 2nd and 3rd rounders. And of course, 1 guy named Patrick Mahomes.
That's important.
So, you would think that maybe there would be more, at least I thought maybe there would be more 1st round guys that comprise the starting lineups of rosters.
So here's my 2 thoughts after hearing that. 1, an average NFL career is what, like 3 to 4 years?
Less than 4, I believe.
Yeah.
And then there's also a stat about how, I saw this in Peter King's
friend of the show,
Football Morning in America. The rate of re-signing 1st round picks is actually not very high because people talk about, hey, can you get, should you draft a running back in the first round? We're talking about Bijan Robinson. And he said, well, you look at all 1st round picks, it's about 50%. You go out of the top 10, only I think it was like 35% of 1st round picks signed 2nd contracts. And so
with their team.
With the original team that drafted him.
Yeah.
And so his point was like, well, it doesn't really matter if you draft a running back in the 1st round because even if they don't get a 2nd contract, well, most players don't get a 2nd contract. And so I thought that was interesting, but it also leads me to think that, okay, 4 1st rounders on a team is probably pretty average because after that, they're either like you might keep 1 or 2 of them, but they're going to move on or, careers end or that person is, doesn't pan out the way you want them to. And so 4 to 5 1st rounders seems about right to me. Of 22. Just because, you got 1 a year and kind of after every 5 years, it's rare for any team to have many players that are left.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about the Broncos, the guys that have been here 5 years, very few of them. So that would take us back to 2018.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you're talking about McManus, Simmons,
Josie Jewell,
and Sutton, I think.
Yeah.
So 4 guys.
Yeah.
I could be missing somebody, but we're close to that being.
That's kind of surprising, right? I mean, if you really are looking into it.
And so that's one that tells me a lot of turnover. So it doesn't surprise me that there's a few 1st round picks. But then also, I think good football teams, you need to have a core of like 4 or 5 really talented,
Top.
really good, top 5 in the league type players if you want to win a Super Bowl. And then just because of the constraints of the salary cap, you're not going to be able to afford to pay a bunch of first round picks. And so you do have to fill it in with third round, fourth round, even kind of later round talent and need those guys to contribute. Otherwise you won't win football games.
Yeah.
And so part of that is like, it makes sense that the Broncos and the Chiefs, the 2015 Broncos, like that group was very top heavy, and then you had to fill it out with some kind of later round guys, and the talent was good enough at the top with Vaughn, with DeMarcus, with Aqib, with DT to make it so that the rest of the guys around him were complementary pieces, if you want to say that. Paton, obviously, at quarterback, even though he was kind of at the end of his career. And then the Chiefs are the same way. You've got Mahomes, and then you've got these second round picks. And then the other guys, you fill out around them because you've got Mahomes and you've got Kelsey. And so can you just get league average play from your other spots? And then you're probably going to be pretty darn good.
Yeah, exactly. I think that if you hit on a couple of guys like in the first round, and then you find a couple of hidden players like a Kelsey, a third round pick who turns into be like all world type of guy, or like an Emmanuel Sanders, third round pick, who is like a really solid contributor for your team.
Pro Bowler.
If you can find guys like that, then you're going to have some success. You find a couple of college free agents or like later round guys like Isaiah Pacheco, Chris Harris Jr., maybe a couple of those guys. And then, fill out the rest of it with guys that are you're doing two things. You're identifying some potential, some talent for them coming out of college, and then you're coaching them up to do what you're fulfilling that potential, so you're doing two things, identifying the potential and then coaching them up. When that all comes together, you're going to have success. And that's just sort of what good teams do. And it kind of just shows the value of, hey, the Broncos only have 5 picks. They start in the third round, but like, these are the kind of players that are going to be big contributors, or at least you hope to be, or they're going to be guys who are starting on a really good team that's, trying to make a run, or these are the kind of guys that you got to have on your roster that you got to hit on. Yeah.
I mean, listen, everybody thinks that, like, this is kind of the point of the exercise, right? Is everybody thinks you need to have 22 great players. You need to have guys that can play good complementary football, be solid contributors when they're around other good football players. Maybe their game gets elevated a little bit. I think of like a Lloyd Cushenberry, third round pick. I think at owners meetings, Sean Payton said, hey, we really think having Powers and McGlinchey is going to help
him,
Lloyd Cushenberry.
Yeah.
And so, that's a third round pick. You don't need him to be amazing. You don't need him to be a Pro Bowler, but he's a guy that can play at a high enough level to be that good kind of complementary piece. And I think the Broncos actually have done a decent job here in recent years under John Elway kind of at the end and under George Payton of finding like a Baron Browning, a Quinn Miners, Lloyd, Damari Mathis, Greg Dulcich. Those are guys that are, in my mind, like good enough that if you put one of those guys on this Chiefs team, they would be able to do more than enough to play well and be a playoff team. It doesn't have to just be the Chiefs, but other playoff teams around the league. And so you're right. You've got to keep hitting there, because if you have the stars, but you don't have those complementary pieces, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
But the other part of it is too, Phil, I think, is this year, the Broncos have to find those third round pieces, those fourth round, those contributors. And they tried to, I think, find in like Mike McGlinchey and Ben Powers and maybe even Zach Allen, the stars there. But moving forward, looking ahead to the 2024 draft or 2025, you've got to also find these top tier guys that the Broncos, they certainly have one in Pat Surtain.
Yep.
They certainly, I think Jerry Jeudy can be a top 10 wide receiver in the league.
Yep.
Justin Simmons, we know, is a really good football player, a top 5 safety.
He's pro guy.
Yeah. And then of course, Russ is the guy that
if he can get
at his best, we've seen him be a top 5 quarterback. Even if he gets back in the top 10, you're now talking about Russ, Simmons, Surtain, Jeudy, even, Javonte, if he's healthy. You're talking about
some of those top
4 or 5 guys that are, you look at those guys and you're like, those are top guys in the league. You now have the pieces around them. But I think the issue is if like those, you've got to find more of those guys, because obviously they get older and
contracts come up and
right. And so it's this dual balance here of finding the stars, finding the guys that you fill in around them. This year, you would think the focus is filling in the pieces around them. And you hope that that's enough. And it also helps your depth, right? Like as many injuries as the Broncos had, if you have a more competitive 2 deep, maybe you survive a few of those a little bit more. Probably not surviving 28 guys to IR or whatever the Broncos had, but a more normal injury season, you're still going to. So
like in my mind, if they got like an edge rusher who could like get 5 sacks next year, possibly, and then you add in maybe like a dynamic running back who gets a couple touchdowns, like those are, now you're talking about sort of a different team if you're finding pieces like that. So, this team seems like it's in a good position here to just sort of fill in with solid players that you can find in the 3rd round.
Yeah, or like, talk about defensive line. You've got DJ Jones. You've got Zach Allen. We've talked about Matt Henningsen. We've talked about Inyomo Wazarike, Mike Purcell, all being options out there. If you find a guy in the 3rd round that slips a little bit and you think you could pick somebody up there that increases your D-line depth or is a good rotational player, that'd be a big add too.
Yeah. So it'll just be interesting to see how they approach this draft. We'll have much more coming up next week. The draft getting started on Thursday. What are you going to do Thursday night?
I'm going to be ready. I'm going to be dialed in.
I'm going to be ready to go too, just in case.
Yeah. It's unlikely, but
anything could happen.
We've heard the Broncos say again and again, they don't want to trade receivers, right? But reports keep coming out that the teams they went after him hard. And so, who knows? Maybe you get an offer you can't refuse.
Yeah. Or what if you like one of these wide receivers that are in this draft, and you're like, okay, it's just interesting. One of the things about Sean Payton is that we hear that he could like morph his system to fit the talent he has. But we mentioned this during free agency. Now that he's going out to acquire talent, what is he truly trying to identify and bring in? And so we'll have a better idea coming up next weekend.
I'm excited.
I love the draft.
I'm happy for you.
You like the schedule.
Yeah. When do we get to talk about that?
You like the schedule. I like the draft.
Yep. First 4-hour podcast.
The schedule.
Yeah.
My favorite.
Swanson, which event do you like the most? Like the draft.
The draft. Good weekend at home.
That's a nice, to relax a little bit. Yeah.
I'm pushing for them to send me to Mexico with Terrell Davis.
Oh.
That'd be the best draft ever.
Nice. Yeah. Why don't you announce a couple of picks?
I would.
You could do like a Pictionary where you're drawing and people are like, okay, which pick is this?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that's Zach Harrison.
2 words.
Ohio State. Yeah. That could be good. All right. Well, should we get the shout outs?
I think so.
Eric, anybody that you'd like to single out, highlight, elevate?
Oh.
Yeah. Anybody? Well, I'll just start. Nikola Jokic. We can do with a Nikola Jokic. As we're recording this, the Nuggets are up 2-0.
Nuggets have not lost a single playoff game.
Correct.
Just kind of cruising toward a title. What could go wrong?
Please don't talk like that.
Why? I'm supporting the Nuggets. Do you want me to support them or not? I don't support them. You get mad. I support them.
Say they've played 2 nice games.
They're undefeated and they've never lost.
Nice games.
They may never lose again.
Nikola Jokic never been 2-0 to start a playoff series.
It's kind of sad.
It's hard to it's hard to go up 2-0.
You got to win 2 all games.
Yeah.
I'll shout out Jamal Murray.
Oh, thank you.
He kind of carried Jokic to the victory the other
40
night.
40 points.
Yep.
That was nice.
He does his little bow and arrow thing. Is that him?
It doesn't really do
arrow?
that. Yeah, it doesn't do that really much anymore.
Okay.
But a lot of people are saying, is Bubble Jamal back? And he said, I'm sick of that narrative. He's like, I'm not. I'm Jamal.
I'm just Jamal.
Yeah.
Also, it doesn't make sense because we're not in a bubble anymore.
He said Bubble Jamal was just the beginning. And I love that.
Like a brief pause.
I love that.
Maybe an extended pause.
You know how we've talked a lot about Tim Patrick and him being out last year hurt the wide receiver room just because that energy. He's got that dog in him. Jamal brings that edge to the Nuggets. And so he's in
a basketball way.
In a very good way.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my little Nuggets moment.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that.
Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, you're welcome. Liz Gerald's from the community department.
Of course. Swanson, you were at a little community, huh?
Yeah, I was out at the Denver Broncos Boys and Girls Club for a Rise session.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
chopping it up on social justice and some kids being taught some of the basics of what is racism and how do you define it and things like that. So,
And Justin Simmons was out there?
Justin Simmons and Montreal, Washington, both there. It was
Nice.
an engaging thing. They were taking part. It's not like they were just sitting back and watching. They were active participants. Yeah.
Nice.
Justin always brings it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
He brings that energy. Anybody else?
I'll shout out Sean Payton. He provided some good moments of levity today during his 50-minute pre-draft press conference.
He said that when John Elway and Mike Shanahan, when they had the tight end split out wide outside of the wide receiver, when they were in Dallas watching that film, Sean Payton in Dallas, watching that film of the Broncos, it was like someone had split the atom.
Yeah.
That was
kind of like a NASA thing, right?
Yeah.
They were doing the NASA all the way back then.
That was probably the number one line from the whole.
Oh, was it?
Would you say or no?
I would say let's keep our golf carts upright.
You thought that was number one?
That was number one to me.
That was good too.
A poor reporter on his first day asked a question about offensive line, I think. And Sean said, well, we just talked about that.
Yeah. But then he answered. He wasn't too mean about it. But
No.
Maybe his internet was going out.
Maybe. But I just, we have not heard much from Sean. The Broncos have been working in silence.
He said, hey, we didn't forget about you guys in the media.
No.
Of course, you've been knocking on his door every day.
Like,
hey, what's going on? Please, let me ask a few questions.
Yeah. But when he does talk, it's great.
It's solid. It's
so
really good.
I'm excited for...
I kind of like that. I'd rather take less press conferences.
Fewer.
I know how to talk. Fewer, but have them be like at 100.
Yeah, I agree.
Versus
100 minutes.
No.
Close.
We were close.
I would assume we'd hear from him during the draft or at the end of the draft.
I would believe so.
I would think so.
Yeah.
And so he did that in New Orleans. So more to come soon.
That'd be good. Maybe some funny one-liners.
Yeah.
About some college kids coming in. It'd be nice.
Yeah. He had another one. I can't remember what it was, but he said something early on that was funny. That
golfing with John Elway.
No, it wasn't that. Got a giggle out of me, but I can't remember what it was. So
some giggles from you.
Just a little giggle.
Yeah. A silly boy.
Yeah, that's me.
You're a silly boy. Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. We'll have more coming up next week. Of course, the draft next Thursday, the first round. And then the Broncos getting into action on night 2 with pick number 67 and 68 as we record.
Yeah, that's right.
You say that one moment, and then the next moment, boom. Whole thing's different.
I mean, if they traded between now and when we post, we probably just wouldn't post it, right?
It'd be very sad.
Yeah.
One of the things that we do sometimes is like we create content and then we just it never sees.
Happens a lot.
Yeah.
People would be surprised.
Is this content? I don't know. Yeah. It seems more meaningful and impactful than just a label like content. It's sort of art,
science combined.
Always.
Splitting the atom.
Yeah. This is an impactful piece of substance that's changing the community. It's not content.
Okay.
We're here for the people, Maybe you had a rough day. Maybe you went to the grocery store.
I think I am.
So you went to the grocery store.
Are you sure you have more patience?
I'm getting there. Well, it's we're running on empty.
No, he said he has less patience.
I have less patience.
Yeah. Maybe if you listened.
Yeah. It was a long time ago.
And he also mentioned that you are the one who sets him off.
Are you sure about that?
Maybe you went to the grocery store. They didn't have any bananas. Okay, so you're upset. You're walking back home with your groceries. You heard me scream. You got a little startled. But then you're like, you know what? I like these guys. And you were like, happy. That's what we're bringing to the world.
We're going to make you like happy.
Perfect. That's what we're bringing to the world. Happiness and joy. Content. Okay, that's going to do it for us. For Ben Swanson and Eric Dalala, I am Phil Milani. You've been listening to...
The Neutral Zone.